Welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, a podcast from Aberdeen discussing the latest trends to keep you and your business at the top of your class. And now, here's your host, Aberdeen's CMO in residence, Matthew Grant.
Hello, and welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, the podcast that focuses on the ways that organizations just like yours are using data to make their business more intelligent. I'm your host, Matthew Grant, CMO in residence here at Aberdeen. This week on the show, we're speaking with Aaron Vidas, founder of Strategybox. Strategybox helps companies make better data-driven decisions and allows them to focus on the things that drive the business forward, like your most valuable customers. Let's dive in. So, Aaron, welcome to the Intelligent Business Show.
Hi, Matt. How you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. It's a little cold here. I was just in California for a couple days, and even though everyone there said it was cold, it was in the 60s, and now we're in the 20s. But you're like in Canada, right?
Yeah, but I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're not representative of the rest of Canada. I have some employees in Toronto, and it's like minus 12 there Celsius right now. So that's minus 20 Fahrenheit. Yeah. And it was sunny, and I went for a run yesterday. So in shorts.
Nice.
So we're cool.
Nice. No, I think I was in Toronto one time in the week between Christmas and New Year's, and I would say it was the coldest I've ever been. But actually, that was probably when I was in Montreal one time in the second week of December, and that was the coldest thing. So speaking of Strategybox, you guys say that you make big data and AI easy for small business. So I was wondering if we could start our conversation here by you unpacking that a little bit, in part because I don't think in general of big data and AI as easy for anybody. So what are you trying to do, and how do you actually help small businesses with big data and AI?
Well, I started the company because I was scratching my own itch. I was a consultant, and I ran my own management consulting company, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out who a company's most profitable customer was. And so we would get data, and I would have all these very high-priced and highly skilled MBAs looking at it, and we would design, very simplistic algorithms, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this that's a little more automated. And there's a lot of buzzwords going around, and I don't really know what anybody's talking about, but this seems like the future. And so I took 2 years and developed a platform that makes it really easy for people to ask questions about their data and get real answers back that'll lead them to take action. And the way that we did that was develop technology that takes data in as you have it, so not having to worry about really cleaning it up a lot, and connecting to typically very hard to connect to old systems, legacy systems that you might have, putting it all in one spot, and then making it really easy for people in a business, no matter if they're the CEO or they're a marketing manager, to ask questions and get an answer that's relevant to them, either through a dashboard or report that leads them to take action. And that's been the whole ethos of the idea. And what we're moving into is, and what I'm really excited about for the company, we haven't built this yet, but eventually there is an Alexa-like device that sits on your conference room table. There's an app that you have, and you just ask a question, and it gives you an answer in the room. Or you do the same through a Google-like search in our app or in our dashboards where, hey, we're able to see how our business is doing. I have a question about some of the data. I ask a question, and I get it back. And I look at that and I go, that's what I've always wanted in my businesses. It's what I've always wanted when I was a management consultant, because ultimately it's like we're being inundated. And with data, that's not stopping. More data is the stat I always kind of sprout out is when you think about the dawn of recorded history to 2016 as that's all the information that was all data ever created. So think about every book ever written, every TV show ever made, every movie. More data has been created every year since 2016 than from the dawn of recorded history to 2016. Think of that as data. every year more data is created now than ever before. And that's not stopping.
Right.
So,
No, it's a funny thing, and then I don't want to, as I can be pretty tangential here, and so I'm not going to go where I kind of want to go in the sense of, what's weird is like we're creating data the way you put it, though oddly enough, a lot of that stuff is capturing data that we didn't have before, like temperature signals or GPS tracking or whatever. But what I want to get, but rather than go down that rather esoteric rabbit hole, I want to come back to my original question, because I think one of the things that a lot of small businesses and even larger businesses struggle with is the size of the data that they're able to tap into and the kinds of data they might need to make decisions. And there are some companies that are large enough that they, a Netflix or something, if you have millions of customers doing everything in a way in a walled garden, you can watch everything that's happening. And now you have tons of data to actually make decisions about. In fact, I guess Netflix right now they're raising their prices, and they can say right now they're going to lose, for example, 8 million customers, I think the number was, if they just raise the price $1. And they have enough data to make an informed decision that way. So I'm wondering if one of the things you end up having to deal with your clientele, and I would imagine especially small businesses, is there a kind of lack of data that they might need in order to make the decisions that they want to make?
I think this is really interesting, because this is a challenge I encounter, or it's a barrier that I encounter literally every day talking to prospective customers, that there's this belief you need to be a Netflix, you need to have this walled garden, you need to have, terabytes of data sitting in some data lake, and we're going to find out all these insights, and then, that's it. It's like, nah, you don't need that. You can start with, hey, we just want to know our marketing performance. And we just there is 4 or 5 things that we report on, and the marketing manager that has to produce that report spends 6 hours a week prepping that report for the executive team.
Right.
That's where you can get started. You can automate that. And so you can have all this information that you collect already come into one dashboard. That's a great use case for starting to get engaged with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, and start making data-driven decisions. You don't need a big infrastructure. You don't need a huge collection of data. And I think that's a fallacy that I really rail against, because it's like, yes, you're a Netflix, you can do that, but you don't need to be a Netflix to start today. And I think that's the thing that I keep coming out. I evangelize this stuff so much, because I'm like, listen, tomorrow you can have a system set up and you can start making data-driven decisions. What's more important is you understand where you're going and how you're going to measure success. And then things like dashboards and reports can help you do that and help speed that process up.
Right. So I definitely get it in terms of you need to start with what you've got. And in fact, right, if you're collecting any data at all, and especially to your point, if you're engaging people to generate reports, whatnot, out of that data, there's probably being time wasted there. There's probably better ways to do that, and particularly through automation, things like that can actually free up your analyst resources, et cetera. But I keep going back to your Alexa vision, which I know in a certain way is kind of, it's science fiction, and it's like Star Trek or something, right? Computer.
Yeah.
But I can imagine what I was thinking about when you were talking about that was how we as humans have to learn the types of questions that we can ask given what we've got. So you could say, with maybe the information you have internally, who's my most profitable customer today? But you would be hard-pressed, I believe, to say, who's potentially my most profitable customer out in the world? Because then I have to know how big is the market, who are all the customers out in the world, who actually is going to have the wherewithal to spend the money I'm looking for or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there's a next level of data that you're going to need in order to answer certain, especially questions about actions in the market, no?
Well, yes and no. Like today, what we're doing with some of our customers is what I think is really cool is we do things like marketing attribution. And for your listeners that aren't familiar with that,
Sure.
What marketing attribution is, hey, how does a marketing activity actually lead to a sale? So the way we approach that problem is we say, well, what is a customer's path to purchase? And we do it for, you could be, we have retail customers that have stores and they do online and offline marketing. So we can actually say like, hey, here's the journey the customer actually takes. Here's the 12 steps or the 25 steps that they take before they walk into a store. And here's all the interactions that they have. And here's what they look like demographically and psychographically. Then to answer your question, what we can do is say, well, we now know what those customers look like and how long it takes for them to be a customer. How many other people in the world look like that in their market? And let's say this company is operating in North America. How many other people look like that? Oh, okay, cool. We know there's 10 million other people that look exactly like this and have the same profile. Cool. So what we've said to our clients is like, listen, there's no guarantee of a sale, but like this is where you're now going to orientate your marketing if you want to bring additional people in, kind of into the tent, if you will.
So to that point, and I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not completely there is some self-interest to a degree in this question, since in part because what Aberdeen does is sell this supplementary data to companies that they don't in general have internally. Like, so even what you just said, what customers look like that, very few small businesses have a huge data set of all companies out there. And so at a certain point, and maybe this is at a certain point, you've got to supplement your internal data with data that you don't have. And so that's kind of more what I was, and it's that next level where you do start, I mean, to the point where we started out, I was saying you got to be a Netflix, or implying that you were saying, no, you don't, you probably got enough to work with right now. I totally agree. What's interesting, I think, is what you're saying is sometimes looking at the data you currently have will help you pose questions that only data you don't yet have might be able to answer for you. Like, who are those lookalike companies?
Yeah, exactly. And what I think is people often jump too quickly to what you just said, where, oh, I want to know everybody. I want to know the other 10 million people that look exactly like our customer base. And I go, okay, cool. We can totally do that. You might need to buy some data, which, again, let's acknowledge, the self-interest of I buy data for our customers with there's services like yourself where that's valuable. And of course it works. Like, there's value in it. But where I think also too, especially if you're just starting out, where the greater value is, well, let's optimize what we have.
Yeah.
We're probably doing 10 marketing activities today, and only 2 of them are actually driving value. They're actually driving people forward or into a store or into a sales rep's, inbox or something like that. And there's probably 8 things we're doing that, they might work, they kind of work, or they might do nothing at all. Let's figure that out first.
Right.
And then we can go into the wider world.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of companies, like, they get tripped up, is like, they're like, oh, well, yeah, we'll optimize, and we're going to be managing by customer acquisition costs and lifetime value. And I go, okay, that's a running activity. But if today you don't even really know how your marketing is performing, that's a crawl.
Yeah.
So let's start a crawl, and then we'll get into that kind of stuff. And that's the fun. It is fun. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's so much value that can be created by just starting with, well, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, and have we optimized our current spend or our current customer base? So.
Yeah, no. It's really interesting you bring that up, because as our show is evolving over time here, I'm noticed certain themes are coming out in terms of how businesses get more intelligent. And that the first step is what you were just talking about. What I'm starting to realize is there's almost 2 different kinds of data that you can be working with. The one kind is kind of what we imagine, like, well, I want data about everyone in the marketplace and what they're doing and all this other stuff. and that's fine. That's what I would consider like externally focused data. But where people need to start, to your point, is internally focused data. And companies have plenty, aside from knowing what's going on out in the world, as it turns out, organizations have a lot of trouble knowing what's actually happening inside their four walls and and being able to evaluate it.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. We had, I'll give you two. One is a customer. I can't say the industry, but they had problems with. They thought they had a demand generation problem. So they thought, we're not getting enough customers. So that was kind of like, we're spending all this money, we're not really acquiring anybody, and like, what's going on here? So that's how we started. What we found out was, we did some dashboards for them for their entire business. So not only the health of their marketing, but the health of their operations. And what became very clear was, it's taking them forever just to onboard their current customers. And so they're spending all this time and money and resources on, and frankly have a very overloaded team, just trying to get their current customers up and running. And so it was like, you have no velocity. Like, your leads are being brought and deals are being signed, but nobody's picking them up and actually doing the work. And it was a wake-up call for the management team, because it was like, okay, well, we've got to focus on removing that barrier, and that's going to speed everything up. So leads were landing in sales reps' desk. Well, now that sales rep actually has time to process the work instead of trying to get their current customer base up and running.
Right.
That was one example. The other one was, a customer was spending, is a retail customer they had an online presence and they had an offline, they have like real world stores. And they're in an old line business. They're in, retail, do jewelry, like sell jewelry. Mm-hmm. And their big thing was, they operate in a pretty traditional media environment. So like they do out of home, they do billboards, they do radio, they do newspaper ads and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that was the sacred cow. Like, this brand has been around for a long time. It's what they do. And everybody knows them in their market for the radio ads. Radio ads and their billboards.
Sure.
And I go, well, listen, your average customer, and then their sales were obviously declining. Their average customer is a male between the ages of 25 and 35. That customer doesn't listen to the radio. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. And what it was, hey, we're very easily able to show this is what the customer looks like, and this is where they're hanging out. So, and your marketing doesn't reflect hanging out anywhere near there. So you got to move, you got to change. And that was the CMO knew this, but the rest of the kind of senior management team didn't. And so this was the evidence, the database evidence to be like, hey guys, we got to change things up. And this is why. And so that's what data can do. And it can justify action. It can also reveal things that you wouldn't normally see, or maybe the underlying problem when you're only seeing a symptom in the business.
Right.
And again, like to your point, it's in the four walls. Nothing else has changed externally.
Oh, yeah. No, because to your point, data, people I know in the data world and BI world and things like that, and in the marketing world, people want to make data, with what we say nowadays, data-driven decisions. I want my decisions about what to do to be based on data. But to your point, you actually also need data to know what's actually going on. Like, in a sense, what are you doing right now and that you're not even kind of aware of?
Well, and I'll give you another example I just thought of. There was one menswear retailer we're working with, and they were running a marketing campaign, and I actually initially thought this was an error. It was returning a 4,681% return on investment. So like it was just crazy. Like I looked at my data scientist, like, no, you got to go back to the numbers, man. Like, something's up here. And we went back and we looked at it and it was like, no, and nobody knew. And we were just kind of like, oh, cool. And like, we shared that with the company, and it went like gangbusters. And it was like, but nobody knew about that. And it was just kind of like, oh, interesting. Like, this is the insights that can be surfaced. And again, It's not hard. It's not, it requires, I think the biggest thing and the hurdle that people get over is, oh, we want to make data-driven decisions. And I go, okay, that's cool. Where are you going?
Yeah.
That's actually the more important question, is like, I could give you all the information you needed in the world to take action. But if you don't know where you're going and how that, like where your North Star is, or how you're going to get to, or what your goal is, that's pretty useless. Like it just becomes, oh, that's a nice insight, and then you move on.
Right.
But if you can see, oh, hey, our goal is this. Oh, knowing website conversion, knowing our best marketing channel, knowing our factory processes that's most efficient, that gets us to where we want to go. Okay, cool. Now you have my attention. And when you think about from a leadership on down throughout the company, when everybody understands that, that's when the gold happens. And that's what I've noticed it's been a pleasant surprise, but where we have to spend a lot of time on with our clients is, that's the first thing we ask. Where are you going? Where do you want to go? What's exciting you? What opportunities are ahead for you? Okay, cool. Let's give you the information that gets you there.
But do you find that people also struggle? I mean, my guess is you do find that people struggle with answering that question, but do they also expect it or try to make the answer to that question itself data-driven? Or because it sounded like you were talking about where are you going in terms of like kind of what you want to do and what your aspirations are and things like that, which we don't usually put a data point on them. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah.
You know, what role does data play in where do we want to go?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is we as humans, we're not motivated by data.
Right.
We're not motivated by information. We're not motivated by, like, in very rare instances, like you think about Dan Pink, he's got that great TED Talk about science and motivation,
Yep.
which I highly recommend everybody listen to.
Yep.
We're not driven by seeing a graph go up or, oh, you get paid more. I'm going to pay you more if you reach this goal.
Right.
Any sort of creative endeavor, we fall apart. Like, just as humans, that doesn't work for us. So that's where I have to back people up. And I go, no, where do you want to go? Like, what's the company about? What do you want to accomplish? Why are we here? So you answer those questions, or at least you have an inkling and an alignment within the organization around the answers to those questions. Then I can give you all the information you want around how to get there.
Yeah.
But you have to have that figured out first. And that's where I see a lot of companies when the symptom is, oh, we're spending too much time on reporting. Oh, we're not getting the marketing results or the sales results that we want. The problem is, the actual underlying problem is, oh, we're not aligned on where we need to go. That's why people are fighting about KPIs.
Right.
So as soon as you do that, and that's where I found, like, we don't do management consulting services and help people figure that out. But that's where I find our conversations are most fruitful. Is like, yeah, okay, where do you want to go? Cool. You want to go there? Cool. Here's the six numbers to monitor to get you there.
Right.
And then you're rocking and rolling. And also, it's the team being kind of vulnerable and acknowledging, like, oh yeah, no, this is why we're here. This is what we're doing. This is what we're up to in the world. Because that's going to get people showing up to work and smiling and looking at a dashboard and being like, oh yeah, cool, we're killing it. Or, oh man, we got to work on this problem.
Right. Nice. So, and I imagine, because one of the other things that you talk about at Strategybox is the need for companies to kind of think through and develop their data strategy. And my guess is, like any strategy, a strategy doesn't set the goal for you. It gives you the high-level approach to how you're going to get to that goal. So before you even work on data strategy, you've got to sort it out. What am I actually trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and that's where I start people at. Like, we have companies approach us, and they exactly that question. It's like, we need a data strategy. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
Where do you want to go? Like, do you want to be today? We work in the travel and tourism, for instance, industry, for instance. And what's been interesting is I just had a conversation with two executives, and it was like, oh yeah, well, we in our region, they're in the Pacific Northwest, we want to be the go-to and be super innovative and actually link up a bunch of different services. And we're not just like a tour company. I was like, oh, so you're do you want to be like a tech company, basically? He's like, yeah, and we're, making these acquisitions and we're going to do this, this, and that. And I was like, oh, well, this changes everything. Like now your requirements are, oh, I don't just need a server that kind of collects our customer data. I need something that ties a whole bunch of different businesses together, and I need to see financial information and operations information and marketing information. That's entirely different than when we just started the conversation. It was like, yeah, hey, can you like do a data warehouse for us? Like,
right.
That was how it started. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, but where are you going?
Right.
And then I was like, oh no, we want this. And that's where I get into a data strategy starts with, well, where are we going?
Right.
Okay, cool. Now that we box check, the more practical questions then become, okay, well, what is the information that we're collecting?
Mm-hmm.
How will it be stored?
Mm-hmm.
Are there privacy concerns both with our employees and our customers, and what are those? I think that's the most overlooked question because there's a new, I'm going to get really boring now. There's a new data law in Europe. It's called the General Data Protection Regulations, the GDPR. I'm sure some people have heard of it.
Yeah, we've even done webinars about it over here.
Yeah, there you go. So there's legislation that's coming down the pipe in Canada and North America. It's actually already in place in Canada, where it's very like that. And it's not even that it's restrictive. Companies just have to be very transparent with this is the data that we collect. This is how we use it. And if you don't want us to collect it, then here's an option to, rescind, basically. Right. And that applies to both employees and customers. And a lot of companies don't realize that. So it's like, okay, you have to be able to handle that. And then the fourth thing that I look at is like, I call it's like the sexy fun stuff is like, okay, now that we got that figured out, like how are we storing the data, what can we do with it?
Yeah.
So is there cool, like a big thing, and this is like everybody talks about AI and machine learning. I always start, again, very simple and very practical. Where are areas in our business that are very manual? So are there reports, and I always go to reporting because it's kind of the easy one. Yep. Are there reports that we do today that just take, I don't know, 2 people like way too long to do? Okay, automate that.
Yep.
And it's very easy to, once you have the data in one place, it's very easy to do that. Then you can start to get into, okay, well, where are we going as a company? Oh, well, we want to start, we want to get better at forecasting. So we want to get better at, so again, back to that travel and tourism company, one thing we had already done for them was sales prediction. So they're a very seasonal business, obviously. And, what was kind of cool is in their business, one of their business units is in Vancouver. I don't know if some of your listeners haven't been to Vancouver. We're a port town. There's a ton of cruise ships. So cruise ships come in on a schedule. They're there for, the day. I think they're there for a day or 2 days. Then they leave. And so suddenly in the downtown core, you have literally 9,000 people that aren't normally there are suddenly there for just a few hours.
Right.
So this tour company wants to take advantage of that. Obviously, they have stop, the hop on, hop off bus tours.
Yep.
So we did an algorithm that says like, okay, well, given this amount of people, because we know how many people are coming in off those tour ships, this is your expected sales. So it's like, oh, okay, now we can start doing better staffing. So we know, hey, on Tuesday and Thursday next week, we're going to have 30% more people than we normally do.
Right.
Okay, let's add a few people. Or actually, you know what? We don't need to market as much for those days because we just know, hey, there's 9,000 people now, now milling around. We just need street teams. We don't need to do online advertising. So we can turn off certain campaigns on those days. So you save money that way.
Right.
And that's the cool stuff that you can start to get into around prediction. Or even what I think is super cool too is like looking at processes. So you can start getting into like, oh, I've got a factory. It's got 10 machines. Maybe we can actually get 30% more throughput out of the assets that we already have by just realizing where the bottlenecks are of those 10 machines. So maybe we buy one model up of one machine and we can run, and that doubles capacity for the entire process. There's a really cool book I always reference called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. It's very cheesy, but it's the best way to think about process improvement I've ever seen.
Right.
So yeah, those are the components of a data strategy. Is like, hey, how are we getting our data? Where are we going? What's the data that we have? How do we protect it, and how do we manage it? And then what can we do with it? Like, what questions do we want answered? And where can we go with it? What's the cool opportunity that can be had? And for a lot of companies, like that you don't need, again, it shouldn't be huge investments. It's something that you have to do, because I just look at it, it's like, having a website in 1996.
Yep.
Like by 2005, it's like, well, yeah, you got to have a web presence. Like, it's just the thing you got to do. This will be in 10, 15 years. This will just be everybody's got a data strategy. Everybody's got a person that's just in charge of managing data, just in charge of even managing customer data, and the interactions of that. Like, it's going to be law. So.
Right. But what I would also imagine, even the way you describe that, is that a data strategy on that front isn't just a one and done, because where you want to go, I imagine, is also going to evolve over time. And then when you start thinking about what do I want to do with this data, that itself may highlight data gaps, or where you might need to get a different type of data, which then influences how you're going to store it, how you're going to govern it, et cetera. So it becomes a kind of virtuous cycle, I imagine.
Yeah, it does. And it also, what's funny is I there's also the efficiency thing. So it's like you'll generate all these efficiencies in the business, and then that just becomes status quo.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, well, what else can we do now? And what I think a lot of companies, again, I try to go back to simplicity, because it's like, this doesn't need to be a big complicated thing. This isn't the transformation of your business. This is, or maybe it is, I don't know, the business might be in that kind of, hey, you're making you're making horse and buggy and like cars are coming along. We might want to get out of that.
Right.
That, and data can reveal that. But you also want to be able to say, like, let's just start, and let's just start discovering, and let's just start seeing efficiency and return. Because it's like any new technology comes along, or anything new kind of in business, it's all cycles. Like, and there's going to be a lot of skeptics. There's going to be a lot of people that, well, why are we doing that? Toys R Us said that 18 years ago. Like, this internet thing, it's a fad. Yeah. And now they're no longer.
Right.
So you go, like, it's the same with data. It's like, this is just a fad. It's like, no, this is the underpinning of how business now works. You need to acknowledge that. Once you've acknowledged it, start creating efficiencies, start seeing an ROI, so that you can then sell a larger transformation of the business, or something larger, or a larger strategy. Because I think that's where people, again, they want to get super fancy really fast. And I'm like, no, start simple, show some value, get some efficiency, see what you're working with, then go into the sexy stuff.
Yeah. No, and that sounds like a great place to stop as well. So, Aaron, once again, thanks for joining us on the Intelligent Business Show.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Next week, we'll be talking with Dan Scudder, CEO of Highland Math. Our conversation will focus on how data can function as a monetizable asset. You won't want to miss it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find this show on iTunes and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Aberdeen_show. And if you want to know what's going on in your market space, be sure to check out Aberdeen.com.